He's 24.
Okay. Children grow up. Children grow up.
Yeah. And of course, I have changed some names, including my daughter's name, just to give her privacy.
Yeah, I know. I can.
I've not changed all names, so I can talk about that a bit as well.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah. So I think we are. Let's start. I would say let's start. And good evening, Ranjani. Good evening, friends. I, Sanjay Chandra, on behalf of Pioneer Book Lovers Club, welcome you all to this interesting evening, this interesting session with Dr. Ranjani Rao, an author. She has published her latest book. I don't know. I mean, she'll talk more about it. Rewriting My Happily Ever After. Recently, it was launched on 15th of October, and I read the book, and I loved it. I liked it. So to start the proceedings, I'll first of all like to read out or introduce Ranjani to all our groups. We are also streaming it live on Facebook. So any one of you who is also on Facebook, please share it on your wall as well. Ranjani had sent me two bios. One was a short bio and another was a long bio. And so initially I had thought of introducing her through the short bio, but then I felt that the short bio does not do full justice to her. So Ranjani Rao is a trained scientist, a self-taught writer, yoga practitioner, and lifelong learner committed to an apprenticeship in observation. Originally from Mumbai, she spent her early adult life in the USA, where she first began writing. Her fiction and non-fiction writing are inspired by her life in 3 countries and travels to 30. Her work has appeared in several print and digital publications in the USA, India, and Singapore. Her essay titled The Girl with the Red Dot, originally published on alternate.org, was chosen for inclusion in the Thomson Reader, a college-level English textbook. She is an author of 3 books, a regular columnist of India Currents, an Indian American magazine, and the Straits Times Singapore. When not working or tackling the unread pile of books by her bedside, she goes for long walks in the nature reserve behind her home. She returns with either new ideas or pictures of wildlife that she shares on social media, much to the embarrassment of her children. She lives with her family in Singapore and stoically bears the dubious distinction of being the only G-rated person in the household not inclined to binge watch shows. In fact, once I had shared my review of her book on my social media platforms, somebody from Singapore only, he wrote to me, Ranjani, and he shared a comment, and he said that he's been reading your columns. I believe you are writing your columns, and he says that he's a fan of yours, and he's been reading your columns. I think they are weekly columns, and so he said that he loved those columns. Now this biodata is a cut and dried, it's still a cut and dried introduction. Ranjani is much more than that. She is an incredibly strong young woman, and she has gone through a lot in her life, but then she has never given up. So Ranjani, before, I would like you to talk a little bit about yourself, so that our viewers get an idea of what you are, what you did, what you are doing. So please tell us about yourself, Ranjani.
Thank you for that kind introduction and sharing that, what happened after you read my book and shared it. So that is news to me. So as I said, as you read out, I grew up in Bombay. So I consider myself a quintessential urban Indian person who grew up in a very loving family. My parents and 2 brothers were brought up with equal access to everything, to education and opportunities. But in the way of that generation, my parents were eager that I get married at a young age so that they would feel, they could feel free from their responsibility of settling the daughter. And in good faith, I was married at the age of 21. I had just finished my undergraduate. So I had studied pharmacy, which was a 4-year college degree in Mumbai. And so I left from Mumbai. I went straight to Washington, D.C. in the US as a young bride. I was just 22. I just turned 22. And my only condition or my only resistance to marriage at that time was that I wanted to study further. And I had put a condition to my parents that marriage or no marriage, I want to study further. And as it turned out, the person who I was introduced to with the purpose of marriage agreed to my wish to study further. And that part went very well. So once I went to the US, I got into a very good university nearby, and I spent the next 5 years getting a PhD. And so life in the US, and this was early 90s. So life in the US was still quite different from life in India, because I have this whole pile of letters that I have written to my parents, which are still with me, and they store all those feelings of leaving your home for the first time and going to another country. So I think that was when the writing started, a little bit of what was going on. I lived in the US for 14 years. In that time, I finished my PhD. I had a daughter. I had I had a really nice job, and we moved back to India. My ex-husband's family was from Hyderabad, so when we returned to Hyderabad. So I had grown up in Mumbai, and then when I came back to India, I was in Hyderabad, which was a new city for me. And I got a job there, and I was again very happy. So my career has always been a great source of joy for me. And but then family life had always been difficult, and I came with the hope that being back in India in clear view of our close families, I would get more support, or there would be more understanding. We wouldn't be as isolated as we were so far away, because coming and going was not that easy from US to India as it was more recently until COVID. But things actually didn't work out the way I thought. Actually, it went really, really bad, to a point where I had to choose between my own safety and sanity and my existence as a person versus my existence as someone's wife and daughter-in-law. So there was a 3-year period of my life when I moved out of my marital home. My daughter was 8 years old at that time. So we left. And I continued to live in Hyderabad because my job was there. I had a separate house, and I had to figure out everything in life. So I was in my mid-30s at that time. The only thing I had was a job. I had no training to live alone. I had never stayed in a hostel before. I had gone straight from father's house to husband's house. And I had come back to India after a long gap. So there were a lot of things that were different, and I had to figure it out. It took me 3 years to come to the conclusion that the marriage was not going to survive, and we filed for divorce. So those 3 years were very hard. It took another 2 years for me to completely settle down. All that happened more than 10 years ago, by the time all that was over. In the meantime, I wrote a lot. I am a writer who likes to write personal stuff. So I used to write essays, which were like slice of life. I would write about something that happens that, most of us experience, but maybe not all of us write about. And I had some degree of success with it. And as my writing progressed, I realized that the one story that I was not writing was this one, which was the most life-changing, the whole trajectory of my life changed. And it took as much courage as it took to move out of my marriage. It took as much courage to write this book. But there was this feeling that divorce is a subject. In India, the numbers are rising. I think compared to my parents' generation, who didn't know anyone who was divorced, everyone knows someone who is divorced right now. So the numbers are rising, but still we don't talk about it, right? there is a lot of stigma, more to do with not talking about it. It's not even bad. It's just that it's this, that there is a darkness behind which it hides. And I figured that there might be some use for me to write my story. Maybe there is a reader who might want to read a story which gives them hope, which gives them courage, and makes them feel that, yes, not everything happens as we planned in life, but there are good things that happen. There is joy, and there is satisfaction, there is accomplishment, everything that still is there. And when I was going through that phase, I wanted a book like this, and it wasn't there. So, okay, like they say, right? Even better than late than never. So I said, let me write it now. And let me see. The book is not written for fame and money. It is mostly an internal process of processing my journey, which is in a book form. And hopefully someone who comes across this book, it might come at the right time for them, and people will take what they want out of it. It's not a recipe book. It is not a self-help book. It is not a catalog or a manual or something. It's a story. It is one person's story, but there are things that others can take. So that is my hope. That is why I wrote the book that looks like this. So I also wanted to give it, so I had given a different title when I first started writing it. But then I realized that this is the title I wanted, because I wanted it to have that positive connotation of happily ever after, and also indicate very clearly that it involved a rewriting. It wasn't like a fairy tale where everyone walks into the sunset and life is fine. So those were my motivations to write the book.
So that was really nice, Ranjani, and but there were a few things which resonated with me as well on that. In fact, my debut book, which I had written, The Life and Times of a Common Man, which were also memoirs, my memoirs in an anecdotal form, where I said that I come from a generation where parents wanted their children, if it was a son, then the son should be an engineer or a doctor, and if it was a doctor, then the daughter should be educated, preferably in a convent school, so that she could be married, and the studies could come much later. The second thing which resonated with me was that even when I got married, I was 25 and my wife was only 19, she was in she still had to complete her final year of university, of college, and she extracted a promise from me also and from her parents also that she will get married after she has completed her final year. And even I could not keep that promise. She still has that grouse against me. The second thing was about communication. You said you wrote, you have letters. I also feel that communication is something which should never break. Unfortunately, we have lost the tradition of letter writing, but then now we have better means of communication. We can communicate with anyone and everyone across the globe through emails or through other social media platforms. So that should always remain. And you have already said that how you got to write your rewriting your happily ever after. So was it difficult for you to write about that period in your life? How difficult it was? Because once you are writing your memoirs, there are positive things, but then there are negative things as well. And did you feel at any point of time that there were things which you would not want to put in the book, and then eventually you put in the book?
Yeah, I think any story, right? So the question is, when you write fiction, you write a story from your imagination, and when you write a memoir or something which is non-fiction, you have to write from life. So there is a baseline amount of information available to you, but the truth is, when you have to decide what goes in the story, what doesn't go, right? It's not like I got up on Monday morning and this happened, and Tuesday morning this happened. So you have to pick and choose. So there was that element of choice, which I had to choose what I wanted to put in. And as you can imagine, as much as there is in the book, there is a lot that is not in the book. And that was a very conscious choice, because I said that what is the purpose of writing this book? The purpose of writing this book is to give hope and courage to people who may find themselves at a crossroad, which may not also be of their choosing, that things have come so far that there is no going back. You only have to go forward, but you don't know what is there forward. What is that? What awaits me after I make this choice to leave this marriage? I wanted it to be what I call a what next book, as opposed to a what if, what if I had not gone? What if it had worked out? That's another story. But that was not the story I wanted. I wanted it to be useful. I wanted it to be practical. I wanted it to be hopeful. And based on that, there were things I decided not to write, which was I did not write about what broke my marriage, because it was not one thing. It is not one thing that breaks. Especially I had been married for 16 years. It was 19 years before I came out. So it was not for lack of trying. It was not for lack of time. So many years had passed. So I didn't want to write about what broke it. I wanted to write about what I did to fill myself with things that gave me purpose in life, and how I found support systems, how I found that that there were people who were willing to help me and not judge me. There were good things in my life, even when there were bad things. I had a job, I had a good boss, and I had some the financial security was a big thing for me, because I could make choices. But because I was working, I also could not make some choices, which is like how to be home when my child got home from school, how to ensure her safety. So I chose what I wanted to put. When it came to, did I know exactly how the book would turn out when I started? No. I have a full-time job. I work as a scientist here, and so my writing time was restricted to first 1 hour in the morning before my office work starts. Now that we're working from home, there is some time saved of the commute. So I would get up every morning. I would set my timer for 50 minutes. And I would write for 50 minutes every morning. But what would I write? So one day I sat and I made sort of a list of topics in one spreadsheet. I just wrote the things I wanted to cover in the book. So maybe about 40 topics I wrote. And then as I started writing, more scenes from the past revealed themselves to me. It wasn't that I had forgotten, but so then that increased to about 52. So there are 52 chapters in the book, not counting the introduction and the prologue. And every morning I would go look at the list of topics and say, what do I feel like writing today? So I wrote in a non-chronological order. And as I said, there were some topics which got merged into one chapter, some got split into 2 chapters. But there was clarity about what I wanted to put in the book. There was clarity in the messaging, but how did I want to show it? I didn't want it to be prescriptive. I didn't want it to be like, you should do this. I don't know what someone else should do. I can only say what I did. So I wanted to pick on those actions which I feel will help a reader, whether they're going through this or not. Many times you feel stuck in life, right? And you are like, how to come out of this stuck feeling? So then there is something you need to do. What is that something? There are 10 things to do. Now, what works for one person may not work for another person. But sometimes we pick up a book, we read one chapter and we say, hey, I also used to like to do this, and I have not done that. Maybe this will make me feel better. Or, I like to walk, but I want to go for a walk with someone. Let me ask my neighbor, whatever. Then it gives some hope. It gives some action. There is some momentum. That was the intention with which I wrote the book. If you notice, since you've read the book, I have kept the chapters short. And I think that is also to do with the fact that today we have short attention spans. We are flitting from one medium to the other. So I wanted people to have that sense of momentum that, this and this, and then there's the next thing, then you go to the next chapter. So it doesn't become very preachy. It doesn't become very prolonged discourse on one topic or the other, and it moves like a story. It is a story. It is not really like a textbook. I think.
Yeah, you are very true, and it's a highly motivational book, I would say, because as you rightly said, that it is not just about what you went through. People may be going through a different situation, but even in a different situation, also it is so very easy to fall into that trap of what if. It is very, very important for you to think of what next, because that is what keeps you moving. So, one last personal question from this book, I would say. In one part of the book, you have mentioned that you walked out of your marital home as you were scared for your safety, you feared for your safety, and yet a few years later, you did try a reconciliation because of your or for your daughter. So, were there some changes in the intervening period when you felt for your safety and when you actually decided to go in for a reconciliation? Or come together, I would say.
Yeah, thanks for reading so deeply. So yes, when I left, the day I left, which is where the book starts with my leaving, uh, things had gotten to such a point that I felt that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think, I couldn't breathe, and I needed to put distance. I needed to put space between myself and the situation. And the problem was, in Hyderabad, I didn't have any relatives. My parents at that time, who were living in Mumbai, were in the US because of family. My brother needed them there, so they had left the country. I couldn't just run to my parents' place, which is what people do, right? Because I had a job. My parents were not in India at that time, and I needed space. So I was very fortunate to have a good friend who took me into her home and kept me, said I could stay as long as I wanted. But at that time, it was true that I thought I just couldn't breathe. I felt that it had come up to here. There were other factors, like I said, in-laws were involved. The household atmosphere was not very good. Once I made my own home and it was functioning, right? I mean, I moved into my own, like I rented a place, I had a functioning home. I felt more confident about my space, that space which I had created, my own home, felt like a safe place in which I could allow one person to enter. But more than that, I think there is one chapter in which I talk about forgiveness. There was a moment, and I don't know how many of us realize that in life there are some moments which literally jump out of, it's like a 3D movie, right, where the thing jumps out. So like your life is going like a movie, two-dimensional, and then there are moments which come out. And I had that moment where I literally had a wave of forgiveness that went through me, where I was willing temporarily, or maybe at that point, in good faith, I was willing to erase the past, erase all the unhappiness of the past. End of the day, this was a man I had married when I was young. I had not dated before. I had not had any other, close intimate relationship. He was a father of my child, and I had not known anything else. And I thought that, we have this child. Am I doing right by my child? And am I being very, in a way selfish to put my needs? And I had that wave of forgiveness. And so like my home that I had created was safe, and I was willing to allow a reconciliation on my terms, as opposed to me moving back into the home with him that I had shared before with him and his parents. So I also talk about going for couples counseling. And I had spent many hours talking to a very wise counselor who said, look, it looks like you still have a doubt in your mind because of the child, and both of you love your child. Until you get this doubt resolved, you will always be in this limbo situation of not deciding whether you should go ahead, reconcile or not. And he had suggested a temporary reconciliation, and he suggested a period of 6 months. And I thought, what is 6 months? I have spent, 16, 18 years in being Mrs. So-and-so. Let's do it. And that moment of forgiveness, that literally is a moment I cannot forget. It just, I felt like something I was washed with something, like a wave went through me. And impulsively, I made the decision to reconcile. And we actually were reconciled for 6+ months, but I think I needed that last bit of confirmation, like in a science lab, we have like one confirmatory test. I had to do that confirmatory test for my own, because I am a type of person who, I like my one boss would say, dog with a bone, a dog which has a bone will not give it, you pull it. So once I take something in my hand, I want to give it my best. I want to give it my all. I want to try everything. And I think I felt at that moment that I had not tried everything. I needed one more try. And once I did that one more try, and that actually blew up even worse than the first time. So there was no doubt. There was no doubt that, okay, this path is not reversible. I am on this path that I cannot go back. But I think having gone through that, no matter how painful it was, there were no doubts after that. After that, I just didn't look behind. After that, I just moved forward. So I think we all have our own quirks and personality traits that we are a slave to them, as opposed to we are in charge of them. Some things we just have to do it because that's our nature, and my nature demanded that I try once more.
Yeah. So that's incredible. That's incredible. So now moving on, what's your writing process, Ranjani? I mean, is it a structured one that you decide that you will write a set number of words every day and a set time that you write? What is your process?
So I try to write at least 5 days a week, as many days a week as possible. What I do is I do have a website on which I have a blog. So I write on a few topics on my blog, which can be about travel, about, in the moment. I write a lot about books. I do write book reviews. I write about writing, about writing inspiration. I have a few places where I have to write regularly. So India Currents, every other month, there is a column that I have to produce for them. The Singapore newspaper, the Straits Times, has been very open to receiving my columns. I don't have a set schedule with them, but in the last 2 years, almost every month, I have to send. That is more of a op-ed in nature. So it's not purely an opinion. It's not purely an essay. It's actually an opinion piece. So then it has to be more current. So I try to write about current events, not as a journalist, but a personal take on current event, something that is, in the news lately. Of course, other than COVID, a lot of things have been written about COVID, and I have also written about COVID. So other than the ones that I have to produce for publication, I do try to write every day if I can. I don't have a word count. What I do have is a running list of topics I want to write about. So I'll be walking and some idea will come and I'm like, oh, I should write about this. Or I'll have a conversation with someone and someone will have there's a dialogue or something they say which will trigger, or sometimes it could be a line from a book. So I do have a running list of things that interest me. And then the good thing about, I don't, like I was just telling to another group yesterday, no one likes the word discipline, because discipline is just, it feels very forced. Everyone likes the word perseverance, but actually, it's discipline that gets the job done, right? Perseverance is a nice word to use after you've come to the other side. But on the daily basis, you have to have discipline. So I prefer to write in the morning. I feel I'm more fresh at that time. And so process-wise, write in the morning, at least write as many days a week as possible. And third thing is keep your eyes open for ideas. In fact, today there were two beautiful columns in the Straits Times. One is by a sports writer called Rohit Brijnath, who is very popular. He writes personal columns once a month, and he just writes very nice stuff. So he had written about letters and memories from objects that belong to your parents, grandparents, and things like that. And there was another lady who had written a column about visiting the home in which she was born. She's probably in her late 70s, and she was born in London. So she went there and she entered that house, and how that made her feel, because it was so different from her growing up. So reading those two things gives me an idea. And as I told you, I have a pile of letters by my parents. So I'm thinking maybe it's time to revisit those letters. So now I know that I will write something about letter writing in the future. The other thing is my daughter lives in the US now, so she's far away, and we are not doing handwritten letters anymore, as we discussed. So we have our FaceTime, or we have calls and texts. But I was thinking, when she grows to the age I am, she will not have any letters. I at least have letters written in my mother's handwriting and my father's handwriting. And there's a part of me that wishes that maybe I will write letters to her just so that she can save something. My parents are no more, so that, those mementos which still carry their personality, their handwriting, dad's scribbling, mom's very nice handwriting, different things they used to write in the same letter. So I keep my eyes open for ideas. So even this talk that we are having today, and I had one yesterday, and this is the first time I'm interacting as an author. So I'm thinking, well, this is a new experience for my life. I should write about it.
Okay, that's nice. So you have written fiction also, and who or what or where do you get your ideas from the fiction?
So when I first started writing, I I think there are two kinds of writers. There are writers who say they're fiction writers, but their first book usually happens to be very thinly veiled autobiography. They actually write their own life story, giving different names to the characters and changing the story. I think when I started writing, I wrote essays to begin with, but when I wanted to expand my writing, I started writing short stories. To be honest, I have written only literally a dozen short stories, which are in one book called Negative Space and Other Stories. Once I started writing regularly, I realized that fiction is not my strong suit. So I write all personal stuff now. But to go back to the idea of where do I get the inspiration for fiction? The fiction, again, ideas are from real life. I don't write science fiction or fantasy fiction where I have to imagine a new, different world and all that. I remember this one particular story I wrote about this lady who likes to dance. She has learned classical dance, and then after she gets married, her husband's family doesn't allow her to practice dance. But then she gets into her 50s, later in life, and she sees an ad for an aerobics class. And she feels very tempted to go to the class, and she really likes the movement and that. And this was the idea for that came from real life. I know many women who had interests which they gave up because of whatever, society, family, and all that. But that didn't take that away from them. That wish to nurture that part, or the artistic part. So even for fiction, the ideas came from real life. I like to write very close to real life as possible, and the closest is by sharing my own story.
So would you like to tell us a little about your next work of fiction or non-fiction that you are writing currently?
So I haven't. So I have two ideas in mind. If you look behind me, you see the map of the world. So I've traveled to 30 countries. I was hoping to do many more, but COVID. So I want to write what is called travel memoir. So it is about traveling to different places, but a very personal take. So while it will have a description of the place I visited, it is not meant to be a guidebook. It's not like Lonely Planet Guide to Travel. It's not going to be that, but it will be more of, I'm thinking of writing a series of essays located in different places where I have visited, and sort of showing again the trajectory of life. I've traveled with my parents, I've traveled with my siblings, I've traveled with my family, I've traveled with friends, I've traveled alone. And every travel, whether it's a new place or a new country or a new person that you're traveling with, the travel itself is informed by where you are in life and who you are with. So that is one idea, which is easier to write because then it's all discrete chapters. Then I just write. The second one, which suddenly everyone is asking me, is, as you know, I ended the book. If you remember the last chapter, I said that is another story, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So the sequel is what everyone is asking, and I don't know. Should I give the spoiler?
No, we'll wait for the book. I think we'll wait for the book. But if you would like to give a spoiler.
So the thing is, I did get remarried, and as a result of that marriage, I moved to Singapore. So I've been married for 8 years now, and I have a new family, and so. That is another major life experience to start in midlife, and again in a new country with a new family. And I have another daughter now as a result of the marriage. So my family size grew, and my location changed, and I was in midlife as opposed to a young person. So my expectations of life were also different in entering this marriage, and of course. All the baggage of the past, as they say, or lack of it. I think that is also an interesting story, because not so much to say that one needs to get married to be happy, but the same thing, what do you bring to that aspect of your life, that you want something in life. Like someone asked me, what do you think about the institution of marriage based on your experience? So I said, it's an institution like any other. It's not for everyone. Like Harvard is not for everyone, right? It may be a very good university, but it's not for everyone. So, one shouldn't criticize the institution. One has to see whether it's the right one for you. So the institution of marriage may be good, but maybe not that particular person, right? So, so that is something I want to write about. It's a more complicated story to tell. And a part of me feels that it's good for time to pass between a major life event and to process it. Instead of writing it so quickly, still 8 years is a long time. But I might write that. A lot of people are asking for it. So just from the demand point of view, maybe I should do it.
So we'll look forward for that. And so do you also read? And who's your favorite author?
I read a lot. I read both fiction, non-fiction. I read anything that I wouldn't say anything. I don't read certain genres. I don't read crime and thriller and horror. I don't watch those. Like I said, I'm very G-rated, life is complicated enough. I don't need to see more blood and gore than there is. Favorite authors, very difficult to say depending on age and stage in life. There is one American author called Anna Quindlen who writes both fiction and non-fiction. She's a Pulitzer Prize winning lady. She's probably in her 60s now. But the way she approaches life and family, both in her fiction and non-fiction, I find it admirable to bring intimacy, but also not compromising on the privacy of family, because you're writing about your own people. I like her. For fiction, I like another American lady called Anne Patchett. She writes fiction. Yeah. Very, very close to life. I really like her. I've been reading a lot of non-fiction lately. The book that made a big difference to me this year was a book called The Power of Meaning. It's by, I'm sure she's a young woman called Emily Esfahani Smith. She has a TED Talk, which is very popular. If you don't want to read the book, you should. It's called The Power of Meaning. And it's about finding meaning in a world obsessed with happiness. So she talks about how we find meaning in life. And that book really opened my eyes, because this might be interesting to your group. because she says that there are 4 pillars of meaning. And one is belonging. We all want to belong to certain groups, like, this book club, for example. Storytelling, that through telling stories, we find meaning. She also talks about purpose, having a cause that is larger than yourself, that you follow, and transcendence, which is, trying to answer that basic question of, why am I here? What is this life for? And I thought that, oh, great. Storytelling will be my pillar of meaning. There's a quiz you can do on her website. And turns out my pillar was purpose. And that also made sense to me, because having a sense of, as you can see, I'm not writing for fun. I'm writing with a sense of purpose. So in my case, I have married the 2 pillars of storytelling and purpose. And that gives me so much meaning in life. So this book really helped me see life differently. I read memoirs. I've become very interested in memoirs by Indian authors, because Indians typically like fiction. They don't like, there seems to be like restraint. There are certain topics we don't talk about, so we will not write about it. And most of the memoirs in India are celebrity memoirs. Priyanka Chopra and Neena Gupta, and tomorrow Neeraj Chopra will also be there. So we are curious about the lives of celebrities, because we just like, what was their backstory? But I think ordinary people's stories are also important, because most of us relate more to a regular person, because so much of our life will overlap with theirs compared to that of a celebrity. So I've become interested. I recently loved a memoir by this young woman about infertility. So she struggled to have a child and had to go through in vitro fertilization and all that. It is very common in urban India now. Infertility is very common. And to read that how this one person went through it may give hope and courage to so many other young people who are going through that. And I thought that was very brave of her to write. So yeah, I do read a lot. I wish I could read more, but
in fact, Sandhya has said that if you like Annie Patchett, you should read her mother, Janie Ray. Her books, Eat Cake and Calling Invisible Women, are both wonderful.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that. I will read that. Thank you for that recommendation.
So now a few quick fire or rapid fire questions before we open it to our readers to interact with you. So your favorite food?
Anything sweet, dessert.
We all have a sweet tooth, yeah. Okay. So your favorite drink?
Chai.
Okay. What are you scared of?
Oh, MRI machine.
Okay.
To get an MRI, I'm trying to avoid everything to avoid the MRI. It's awful.
Okay. Are you a morning person or an evening person? But you already replied. You are a morning person. Any regrets in life?
Not really. Not now.
Okay. So anything that you would like to change in your life?
Yeah, I would like to turn the clock back and, do some things which you should do when you're young. Like, for example, I have this goal that keeps repeating every year on my annual goals list, which is to learn swimming. And I'm like, high time, I should have learned swimming when I was a child.
Okay.
But yeah, it continues every year, carry forward.
Your happiest memory?
My happiest memory, I would say more than happy. A very striking memory I have is, I was just telling my daughter the other day that when she was about a year and a half old, we went to the temple in California. And we were just, I was holding her hand and we were just doing the production. And I looked at her, she's tiny and she's holding my hand and I'm looking at her. And I think at that moment, I felt everything was perfect. It was like, I have everything I need. And it was in my mind, there's a photograph of that moment, but there is no real photograph of that moment. I remember feeling very content. It was just that everything was perfect. Sometimes you eat something which is like perfectly flavored and it goes down your mouth and you're like, this was the most perfect bite I have had, but it's just gone. It's like that.
Okay. So would you like to read an excerpt from your rewriting My Happily Ever After?
Sure. How much time we have?
So we are into 45 minutes. So very quick, maybe a couple of excerpts, and then open for interaction with the readers or members of the Pioneer Book Lovers Club.
Okay, I will read one part about prayer. So I used to go to this temple in Hyderabad and sit there and listen to the priest chanting the Vishnu Sahasranama. And
is the temple in the Apollo Hospital?
Yeah. So I used to go and listen, and it used to give. This was before I had moved out of my husband's house, but that was like my few minutes of peace. And so I would go there. So several times. So I'm just reading from the book now. This is from a chapter called Seeking Solace. Several times a week, I would stop at the temple in the evenings, just in time to join the chanting. The exclusive focus on the Sanskrit words gave my mind a break from the dark clouds of gloom that accompanied me to work and back every day. Was I in denial of the irreversible disintegration of my marriage? Was the temple an easy escape? Or was the chanting a fervent appeal? Faith is a funny thing. It holds out the option of surrender when everything else has failed. The power of prayer lies in the ability. The power of prayer lies in its ability to give us permission to put down our burdens and trust that the universe will have our backs. Even as a cynical part of me didn't expect a miracle to happen by merely adding my voice to those of the priests who chanted the entire Sahasranama without glancing at a written version, the trusting younger me had once been nurtured by the simple act of participation in a communal ritual. My problems and me became insignificant for those 45 minutes of the chanting cycle. In that sliver of space where everything, including past mistakes, future mishaps, and the uncertain present, was suspended, I could catch my breath and ease the pressure on my chest, even if it was only for a few minutes a day.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So very sublime. So now we open the forum, open the floor. Pioneer Book Lovers Club members, other members, please interact with your author, Dr. Ranjani Rao. Please go ahead. You will have to unmute yourself. Anybody who wants to ask something or talk to her, please go ahead.
Very good evening, Ms. Rao. I am Professor Shankar Sahai from Delhi. Are you able to listen to me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I am a budding author whose the first book has just now got released. I would like to know that as an author, which is the one biggest impediment which one has to overcome?
Well, you already published authors. So are you talking about after publication or on the part?
No, I think I'm talking about in the process of writing the book.
In the process.
From the stage of writing till the time of publishing. According to you, which is the biggest impediment?
I think it's up to you. So a lot of people say that, they've been working on a book for 5 years, 6 years, whatever. And when they ask me how long did it take for you to write this book, and I say between last December and now, right? So I think for some people, discipline is the issue to get to doing the work. For some, I think it's clarity, because they say I've been writing 6th, 10th draft of the same story. So then that means there's not enough clarity on what they want to write. I'm not even discussing the publication process. This is self, introspection as to what is your strength and what is your weakness, because we normally focus on the weakness and try to fix it, but I always recommend people to work on your strength. So if your strength is in the ideation stage, then have an airtight idea, and then you may need some external support and accountability, like a writing coach, or you become part of a writing group to do it. For me, discipline was never my problem. I'm basically a disciplined person. For me, purpose was very important. Once I decided the purpose of my book was that it will help other people, then everything else fell into place. The most important thing, though, I would say for an author is to do early enough is to define what success means to them. Because many people get caught in this success as in so many copies being sold, bestseller lists, and going viral and stuff like that. That cannot get you out of bed and make you write every day. That should not be the thing, because that is outside your control. So if you're very clear that my definition of success is that this story which is within me has to see a form that can be shared with others. So it can be through a blog, it can be through an email newsletter, but if you want it in a book form, that story which you want to see in book form, that is your success. Then who likes it? How many people like it? How many people buy it? How many people talk about it? All that is outside the writing sphere. That goes into marketing, that goes into public relation and all that stuff. So I think the biggest thing for an author is to produce the work by self-awareness. So you use your strengths. And secondly, on the external part is to, in your mind, write, like organizations write like mission statement and vision statement, right? So personal success statement may be a good thing for an author to do early enough, because then the steps you will take will be different.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Shankar Sahaji. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. Can I go with my question?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, this is actually a follow-up on what you said, Ranjani, about focusing on the writing journey rather than, who will buy and how many copies will get sold. And I completely agree to a large extent. But I see so much. A little bit of introduction. I am the editor for Women's Web. And so I handle a lot of book features. And I see that so many of them, the authors actually have to come up with a marketing plan. Especially if they are not publishing through one of the big publishers. I'm not talking about vanity publishers here, but even the smaller publishers, they ask you to come up with a marketing plan. Now, for somebody who, for example, would be, more, looking inward and doing the creation itself, it might not, come naturally to go into the marketing part of it. What do you say for such people? I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it is something that is expected of you as an author. Anything that you would like to say for those who worry about that?
Absolutely. Because I am that person. So, I mean, I am a scientist. I work in a lab in R&D. I don't do marketing. I don't worry about marketing because it is someone else's job to market. So for me, when I was told that I have to incorporate that into my writing, so writing is one part of it and marketing is the other part, that I need to be aware of both. I totally agree that there is a responsibility to the product that you create as the creator. However, the thing that I disagree is a publishing house choosing to publish an author based on the size of their platform. So instead of what is the story, what is the book that this author has brought to us for publication, instead of that being the important factor, you start saying how many followers do you have, how many people will buy a copy of your book on day zero. For a debut author, it's very difficult to answer that question unless you are already a celebrity or marketing something you do for a living, or it comes naturally to you. So one of the reasons I decided to go with my internal imprint to print this book is because I said that I will take full responsibility for this book from the time I envision it in my mind to create it and to put it out there and follow it, to handhold it all the way. I was not on social media until 2 years ago because Facebook became very popular when I was going through my divorce. The last thing I wanted to do was on Facebook, and I have no photos to put. I have no happy things to share. And I had no time basically. And 2 years ago, I asked my daughter, I said, can you put me on Facebook? Can you create an account for me? Because I'm told that as a writer, I should reach people and social media is the best way. So you won't believe today, my children are my advisors for social media, saying, don't befriend all the weirdos out there, So I am that person. But I will tell you what has changed in my mind about social media. I have found the people I want to find because I'm writing the things I want to write. So I write about managing my time. I write about, what's happening outside and inside, and how in fact, I did what is called build in public for this book. So I created a website a year and a half ago. I put a blog on it and I started sending out a newsletter. And this year I started sending out every 2 weeks. I sent a newsletter. I have a small group, but every 2 weeks I had to tell people what was my progress. I wrote so many words. I'm in draft 1. What did I struggle with this week? What inspired me this week? Just that external accountability. Even though I would say I'm disciplined, I formed a bond with readers. And to be honest, my social media platform is not big, but I will tell you what makes me very happy. In the last 1 week since my book is released, every day I get at least one message by email, on WhatsApp, on social media that says, I loved your book. I'm sending a copy to someone else. I have put a review for you over here. I have told this other group about it. I finished your book in one sitting. No amount of thousands of followers will be equal to this, these one messages that I get every day. Like yesterday I woke up, there were 2 new reviews. Today there was another one, and there are messages. So yes, there is that marketing part, which may not be the strength of an introverted author. And you shouldn't force someone to do the things that just don't vibe well with their internal value system, because art is very introspective and subjective, right? To say that every artist, every author, dancer, writer, creator should follow this 5-step marketing plan doesn't somehow sit well with me. In the last 10 days, I have interviewed 10 people who have started communities. I have interviewed 5 readers of my books, and I do these 9-minute audio conversations with them, and I put it out on my social media. I'm getting so much joy from that because I'm connecting with people who I admire, who I respect, who are making the world a better place in their own small way. These are not big famous people. This is someone who started a book club. This is someone who started a literary magazine, someone who started an online literary website. These are the kinds of people I'm interviewing because that is my community. These are the readers I want. So to say that, do you have 5,000 people on Twitter and 10,000 on Instagram? No, I still have low hundreds. But every day getting those messages makes me more happy. So
yeah, that sounds amazing. But it still involves socializing, right? There are a lot of authors who find it very difficult. And my question was actually for those who would rather leave it in the hands of those who know how to market, who have an audience, and they want to focus on the writing itself. So that there seems to be no way out of this in the current time somehow.
Yeah, I think what happens then is, these are the authors who would probably benefit from hiring PR or going with a traditional publisher who probably has a publicity budget. But I think the downside of that is because they will follow those marketing fundas and mantras or whatever it is, right? Which may be a one size fits all. I think maybe for fiction writer, it may not matter so much because they are writing fiction. But I think for people like me who are, there are certain things I will just not do. Even if I pay a PR firm to come up with a campaign for me and they propose certain things which don't vibe well with me because I'm writing personal stuff, right? I cannot, like for example, I chose not to have ads on my website. I choose to keep my newsletter free. I do not want to compromise those things because then I want to have control on what I'm communicating so that tomorrow I can take responsibility. You can come and tell me in that post you wrote that, you are against blah, blah, blah. And maybe I will change my mind, but I will be able to defend it. I can't say that, oh, that's my ad guy doing something or that's my PR guy doing something. I don't want that. When I was a scientist, to be honest, I'm still a scientist. I don't publish as much, but I remember publication is a big thing for scientists, to say that I have 100 articles published. But I learned from a mentor very early on that if you didn't do the research or you didn't contribute to the research, don't try to put your name on that article just to count the number of articles. And I thought that was very good advice very early in life, that you should be able to stand behind the work you produce. And the same goes for copy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, may I ask a question, Ranjani?
Yep, please.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Chandra. I'm one of the founding members of the club. You spoke about a wonderful topic today. I'm enjoying the conversation. And the topic is that can we flip it a little bit, that those couples, especially the young ones, who want to succeed in marriage. So I have been married for 22 years myself, and I know that what it takes because I've been successfully married. But at the same time, there are a lot of couples who are wanting to make it work, but they really don't know how to do that. So that know-how I am talking about, which is available. Do you think that that is something which should be made available to them, because that is not easy to understand because of the psychology being a taboo subject? I was reading a book some time ago, I think almost 2 decades ago, that you must have also heard about that, Bridge Across Forever. So this book was written by Richard Bach or Richard Bach, the way you like to pronounce. And one of the line in that book was, it is great to find the right partner, but it is even greater to become the right partner. So I'm talking about that becoming part. That do you think that the helplines and the psychology help, or the self-help books, they help to some extent, but they really don't go that far? The kind of the agony, the kind of depression that a lot of, I would say millions of young couples especially go through. Can we talk a little bit about that? Thank you.
So do you think I'm the right person to answer this question?
Yes, because you thought through.
Okay, so I think if someone asked me for advice, right, about marriage, based on my own experience, I felt that I was too young. I had not even come to a point where I wanted to get married. It was my parents who wanted me to get married. So I felt that I didn't even know myself. In one of the chapters, I talk about my grandparents, my paternal grandparents. My paternal grandmother was taller than my paternal grandfather, which was slightly unusual for that generation. And I asked my mother, I said, how come, grandmothers taller, if they stand side by side, I can tell that she's taller, and normally they're not standing side by side. And she said that, they got married when they were not even teenagers. So she must have grown afterwards. And that analogy of growing afterwards, right? So in this case, it was a very visual thing that she grew taller. My grandmother bore 10 children. She grew as a woman, as this really big banyan tree, who supported this large family. What we saw was she was taller. What about the rest of us? We grow, right? The man grows and the woman grows. You grow. The question is, are you able to grow together? Right? That is the main question in a marriage. That you come fully formed, assuming you're both adults. Can you flourish in that same soil? Because now it's a common soil. You came from different places. And can you grow together? To do that, each person needs to know what you need. What is that combination of sunlight and water and fertilizer that you need? And can you ask for that? Will that be given to you? Each of you, both of you. Do you know what that takes? Some people need more freedom. Some people need more structure. Some people need more space. Have you talked about those things? You cannot envision every situation that comes in the future, but do you know yourself enough? So the one thing I feel is that you may have slightly different value systems as two individuals coming into a marriage, but do you have a shared vision? So there has to be at least 60% overlap in what you both want from life. And then you still have that 40% where you do other things. But if it is totally disjointed, it's very difficult to find that. You can't say that, okay, now you grow here, we'll put two children in the middle and they will hold our hands and then we will keep going. It's just too much pressure on the child to keep the parents together. It's not fair. It's not fair. And I say that, it's a combination of guilt and love that the child is supposed to make the parents stay together. So recently I came across this, and I don't know if it's a thing, but there was a psychologist with whom I'm connected on Facebook who said that she offers something called as pre-marriage counseling for people wanting to get married. Maybe they found a partner, maybe they are looking seriously. And she says that that's when she tries to understand what is it that these two people want. And I thought that was a great idea, because you are in your 20s, a lot is changing in your life. You maybe at a job, you moved to another city, you don't know yourself. So I think something that can, it's like the vaccination for COVID, right? We don't know if it will work, but let us take it because at least it will reduce the overall damage. So I think something like that may be a good idea. I don't know how well accepted it is, because I know that even in marriages where people are having difficulty, sometimes the couples are unwilling to go for counseling. And I think that's so sad, because it shows that you're not even willing to put in the effort to make it work. And later, after marriage, like, now what? We're married anyway, right? So that kind of a fatalistic attitude I see. Maybe something early on, before you get married, if you can have someone walk you through, I heard this at some session. My friend who's a counselor was saying, she said that we go from dependence in a couplehood to independence. But what we should strive for is interdependence. And there is a difference between the two, right? There is a difference between independence and interdependence. I don't think we understand. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm sure a well-trained, compassionate, older person who's seen a little more of life may be able to advise young people. I would highly advise. I should go tell my children to do that.
So thank you, Ranjani. Thank you so very much. We have been talking for about now. Sanjay, you wanted to say something?
No, thank you so much.
Yeah. So it's been now 1 hour, 10 minutes since Ranjani has been talking, and it has been a scintillating session for us at Pioneer Book Lovers Club, Ranjani. Thank you so very much, and we look forward to have more interactions with you in future. And please do read her Living My Happily Ever After. Ever After. And please do share reviews. So thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was great fun for me as well.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.